Are you ready for the Olympic Games in Tokyo? Have you got the etiquette down to a T? This week, we're going to be speaking with Kenji Okamoto about how to survive in a facilitation mindset.
Welcome to the Circuit Magazine, the #1 source of information on protection matters, the industry-leading magazine for all security professionals who want to stay ahead of the game.
Are you going to the Olympics this July in Japan? Big question for you and your principal, who normally would be traveling the globe, but perhaps in the current climate may be a little bit apprehensive. Operating in Japan, what an interesting culture. This week, we're going to be speaking with Kenji Okamoto, who is actually a very long-standing friend of the industry in Japan, MD of Vector Risk Management, formerly Spectrum Asia. And we're going to look at cultural nuances and the reality of what EP means in a Japanese context. A little bit different this week. I'm here with John Moss. What should we try and get out of today's episode?
Well, we need to look at this and understand how we're going to approach large-scale events going forward. I mean, in the past, attending any event with a prominent individual or high net worth has always brought its fair share of issues, and it's certainly always something that'll keep you on your toes. But now we've got so many more unknowns, and as this podcast goes out, we're still a couple of weeks away from the Olympics, and I still get the sense that the picture is being painted in front of us as we move closer to the event. But look, we've got Wimbledon just kicking off this week here in the UK, and we've got the delayed Euro 2020 happening at the moment. So perhaps there's a little we can take away from what's happening over there.
And I think you're right, because there are two main topics, really, aren't there? Major events going forward, and this one, we happen to be in Japan. So let's look at the Japanese context, because that makes for an immensely tricky environment to predict. Now, everyone says Japan is nice and safe, but do we really understand the threats that are posed to the Olympics? And everyone says that, everything is very smooth and things run like clockwork. But how can an international ultra high net worth individual or principal or corporate executive achieve exactly the same service and expectations that they might have internationally? What is it about Japanese culture that will be different? So for me, two things I think I want to take away, because you're right. We don't know how these international events are going to go. Now, Kenji, he's been in the business a long time, since 2004, and he's taken many international delegations around Japan. So we'll get a flavor of that. But quite honestly, I don't know many security professionals in Japan. So I think even for that reason alone, this is going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, it definitely is. And, you mentioned that we're anticipating this to be safe, largely to do with the Japanese culture and the grip that the authorities have over there, the power they wield and the influence they have in keeping things in order. And we've seen this a few times now, particularly with the Olympic Games, when it's been held in what would be considered far more precarious, maybe even hostile regions. And there's a lot of fear of the unknown and the dangers and so on in the lead up to it. But actually, in reality, it's a big opportunity for those governments and countries to put themselves on the world stage and show how well they can manage something. The last thing any government wants is a huge security incident going down on their watch. But as an operator, going to an environment where the authorities have complete control, is that a good thing? Yeah, it's good to feel safe, but you still need to be effective. You still need to be able to do your job. So you're operating under totally different conditions here, and you need to prove your value in different areas. And I really think for any international protectors who are attending the Olympic Games, it's going to be more in the area of facilitation where they're going to come to the fore. What do you think?
Well, absolutely. Facilitation is going to have to be key. Even if it's not language, it'll have to be the person understanding the local context. Why is something provided or not provided in the way you expect? You need to be able to facilitate it because, as I understand it, that authorities do not recognize you as a security entity. So you're just another person. And if that's true, then how do you operate? You can't have any weapon at all. And actually, you might not get very much cooperation or help from the police because they're busy doing something else. And you are not their priority because maybe they feel that everything is absolutely safe. So how does that work? And what value can you add? Maybe medics will be in great demand, but then can medics operate in Japan legally? I don't know. And then if you told someone in Japan that you're a bodyguard, I mean, maybe Kenji will allude to this, but I imagine they'll think you're someone out of a manga comic book rather than a professional because they'd say, but why? Why would anyone except for an underworld boss have a bodyguard? So lots of cultural problems. And as you say, this is going to be a big time for facilitation, I believe.
Yeah, and I think that's where the value of today's guest comes in. When we're going into somebody else's country, we need to make friends. We need to have local allies, friendly forces. We need to have good working relationships, and we need knowledge on the ground. Even the best advance in the world is going to struggle in a different country, different culture, under the conditions that anyone who's there for the Olympic Games is going to be operating in. You can't possibly take all of that on your own as a guest in the country without that local help on the ground. And so it's going to be fascinating to hear today from Kenji, who can give us the background on both what it's like to operate in the country and what people like him and his company can do for internationals coming across to Japan.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into it. He's a long time on the scene in Japan. Let's meet Kenji Okamoto and let's discover what his take is for operating in Japan and then takeaways for large-scale events. Very much looking forward to this one.
And now, let's meet one of the contributors to the Circuit magazine.
Good morning. We're talking with Kenji Okamoto, Managing Director of Vector Risk Management out of Japan. We're talking executive security, risk management, and yes, the Olympics and that climate. We're very interested because, well, we don't meet on our side of the pond too many practitioners from Japan. So, of course, we're very, very pleased to have you on. We're going to get into a more detailed interview, but let's do what we characteristically use as quick fire questions. Where does your passion, Kenji, come from for this field?
Well, thank you very much for having me here. Basically in Japan, because of the risk levels, we started doing mainly due diligence and corporate investigations, and we were the agent for the IBA chapter in Japan. Basically, that's how we started, and we have tried to develop the EP close protection aspect in Japan since the middle of the 2000s.
And were you in law enforcement before, or government, or something like that?
No, I'm a special case, as I'm always told. So it's been mainly private security since the beginning. I was actually doing a lot of sourcing work back in the day, looking business intelligence and that sort of work. And I think we just developed the security aspect in Japan. It's quite, because of the risk levels here. If you say you're in security, most people would say, why? Japan is so right. That is the reality of the world we live in Japan. It's quite different from overseas.
And so maybe that's a good segue into the second quickfire question, which is, what would you most like those not initiated in Japan and Japanese culture maybe to better understand?
Well, I really like folks to give security professionals here a bit more respect, because it's a totally different sort of image if you say you're from law enforcement or even the self-defense force. We don't have military in Japan. We can't use the word here. Folks overseas, if you say you're a former law enforcement or former military, you do get a bit of kudos, I think, for your patriotism and everything else. In Japan, it's kind of different. If I were to put the Japanese flag outside my house, they would call the cops because they would think I'm a right-winger, right? It is very different. I can't wear a shirt with the Japanese flag. They would think I'm nuts. That is the reality in Japan. Everything is very subtle. It's a very different landscape when you talk about security in Japan and overseas, I believe.
I learned a lot just from that. So Kenji, just from what you're talking about here, because I think the piece for our listeners is culturally the landscape is so different, and all we get are bits and pieces, and usually it's mass media. But even from a close protection standpoint, a lot of Westerners aren't traveling over there. And I've been in the business for quite a while now. I've only made one work trip to Japan, and it was so quick that I didn't even get a feel for everything that was happening. One, I'm glad to have another resource over there, so hopefully we can link up after this call. But with that, can you kind of take us through what the landscape looks like for a practitioner that's a local?
Well, it is quite a special space. When you say you do executive protection, close protection in Japan, folks would be like, what is that? And if you say bodyguard, it'd be like, what? Why? In Japan, it's so safe here. But that's just the reality in Japan. So, we try and educate folks as well. There is the physical security aspects that we have to take control of, but also their insurance purposes. Clients have ever-changing demands. We have concierge, sometimes have security driver as well. And just like a tour guide, especially for the landscape here, it's a mixture, it's a hybrid of all these different skill sets that you need to succeed. Because if you're just fully security and you look too much like security, there are some clients that just don't like that because you don't blend in.
Sure.
And you just attract much attention, and sometimes folks don't like that attention.
Sure, got it. And so if we take that mindset, and we're heading into the Olympics, and granted, the Olympics games, which aren't that far away. And again, we're in a little bit of a different climate right now, kind of dealing with the pandemic and all the restrictions that are caused by that. But do you see an increased demand for your services during this Olympic season, or is because the unique issues in Japan anyway won't allow for that?
I hope so for business, of course, not
sure.
But the reality is we're trying to strike a balance, because for the Olympics, you might have read 80% of the populace do not want the Olympics to proceed because of the current pandemic. They think it's too risky, and a lot of our clients as well have been a bit hesitant to be in the public space just because of the optics. If a VIP comes in, corporate executive, folks will question, hey, why are you guys here and not doing your social distancing from back home? So that is an important factor. It is something that, balance is very important in Japan.
Okay. That's interesting because, here in the US, you might have seen, we're the opposite. We want everything to be opened, and we want to get out there, and of course it depends on which circles that you're in, but everyone's clamoring for a reopening. And so, we just started with a lot of the sports teams, and the basketball and football, and those stadiums are packed. Now, of course, we don't know what the long-term ramifications of that are. So when we think about sports games, particularly big international events, we think, oh, it's going to be a boon for protectors. We're all going to get those phone calls. We're all going to be out there in some capacity. But you're showing us the other side to that.
That's right. The soft skills are really important, and it's no big secret that even vehicle passes, no one knows what's happening with vehicle passes for VIPs, right? I'm getting calls every day asking, hey, what do we do with safe transport? Where do we get the passes for vehicles for VIPs? And the answer is to be determined until the last minute.
Sure.
I would agree.
Absolutely. Yeah.
As usual, right?
Yeah. Right. The flexibility part.
So Kenji, with Japan being rather safe and with it being difficult to be visibly identifiable as maybe security, well, what are the threats apart from Corona? At the Olympics, surely the threats are more on the soft skill side, more on the reputational risk, as you mentioned. Could you paint a landscape of what you're actually going to have to address?
Threats would be just the amount of information that's being shared with the private sector, which is the space we operate in. We aren't able to flash any badge. We don't get special treatment. If you say EP or anything like that, people look at you weird. So it's getting information, of course. And besides the pandemic, I would say, understanding what the government plans as well for some of the VIPs here. Everything's changing, on a daily basis. Travel restrictions, for example. I mean, we had a lot of conversation with the law enforcement for another major event that we had a few years ago, and they said that the threat of terror in Japan is very low, and one of the main reasons is it's very hard to procure the ingredients for, say, a bomb in Japan, which I thought was kind of funny, but of course I said yes, sir, you're right. Right. But that's just the reality, right? Another threat I would say would be, as we all know, the earthquakes, major earthquakes. That would be a big problem, right? On top of just the restrictions with the vehicle travel and everything else. So hopefully, we won't have additional drama.
Right, and I would think too, just by the nature of the games themselves, and again, I know you mentioned that you're operating at reduced capacity, but just logistical challenges. You just referenced the fact that for the vehicle movements, you don't know where those access points begin or end, and they're probably obviously changing. And so, I can remember I was at the Atlanta Olympics was in the UK. Was that 2012? 2012. So 2012, we get the Olympics there. And so just navigating that space with all of the roadblocks and road openings and this checkpoint and that checkpoint, take the security aspect out of it for a second and just talk about when dealing with our VIPs, just their comfort and their time management. There could be a case made for the need for us.
Definitely. I had a very similar experience as well, logistical nightmare. We had a very high-level government official with us. And this was for a high-level meeting as well. And we just could not go through because we were not part of a higher-level list. We were in the high-level list, not right. Higher level. And we weren't told off. And this was a very high-ranking minister. But of course, in Japan, that doesn't really count because the minister is from a foreign country. And it was quite exciting, to say the least. We were actually stopped at roadblocks, right? And we had to say, hey, check out Wikipedia. This is the guy on Wikipedia. And they would say, oh, yeah, but, can you please wait here? Let me check. So that was the sort of a treatment that we have experienced. And again, we take it in stride. It's not local law enforcement's fault. It's their job to, to stop it, right? Sure. But there is a gap. There is no, unlike the States, for example, community policing. That's kind of unheard of. Okay. You do get community policing here in Japan, but it's, maybe a law enforcement visiting, I don't know. I mean, doing some kind of, public service, like really small, minor stuff. Mm-hmm. But overseas, if you have the right connections, you get on a police boat, for example, you get a tour, you sit in a squad car, you do your YouTube in a squad car, and with the boys, you can't do that in Japan. You can't even touch the car. So, okay, all right. It's a different sort of atmosphere here.
Sure.
Yeah. So Kenji, let's think then beyond the Olympics, because of course, sadly, a lot of principals will not travel to the Olympics, right? But of course, the memory of Japan being a great place to visit, and it's always been there, right? So maybe a useful question would be, how can an international operator work out who is legitimate and who is not in Japan? Because there's a language barrier, maybe there's a cultural barrier. Is there an association? How can we make sense of it?
I believe you have my telephone number and my website, so that's your answer.
Good first start, huh?
I'd say that most domestic security firms are unable to provide this level of service, this level of niche, boutique, very high level of service that a lot of our clients expect, just because they don't have the experience and of course the language. It's like me trying to find, and close protection agent in the States or in the UK who speaks really good Japanese. There might be a few, but not too many. So I think our foreign guests as well would find that to be a challenge. Also, just getting things done. You might have heard the saying that Japanese, maybe like the Thais, it's a land of 1,000 smiles. Everyone's smiling, but there's always two sides. They don't, they're not in your face, so to speak. So you never know what's going on. For example, even getting cooperation from a 5-star hotel to hold the elevators. They'll be, no, we can't. What about the other guests? Excuse me, there's only one guest and he has the whole floor. So it is that sort of negotiation that we have to go through. So that's very important. Expectations. There are just so many things that operators from overseas, when they're in Japan, kind of take for granted back home, and they expect the same level of service here. We obviously try. There are a few good companies out there, but I think all of us face the same dilemma. Some of the expectations are quite difficult to be met here.
No, I get that for sure. Particularly coming from the West, we sometimes have the mindset that the expectation is that everywhere is like here, and a lot of the cultural nuances get lost on us, and it'll get us in trouble. And so I'm a big believer in making sure that we liaison with local operators. And so to that point, being able to figure out where to find those local operators. And now we've got one. We can dial you up and at least begin that vetting process, right?
Thank you. I mean, it is very different. Like, police escorts, for example, that's unheard of. We once had a very high level, like, government official as well, actually the same one that I mentioned just now. And it was tough to get a police escort. They were saying, no, he's not high enough. He wasn't the president. Okay. Thank you. But that is the dilemma we face in Japan. Obviously, we're not armed. All we can do is halt. If they do halt, then we're lucky. We try and avoid the situation, de-escalation. That's number one. If you see how law enforcement operate in Japan, it's very different, for example, from how law enforcement operates overseas, especially in the States. In Japan, it's really, they apologize. They say, hey, very sorry, I don't want to do this, but I have to.
Yeah, that's very different than the U.S. So.
Very different. And, they would negotiate with you. We had what's that hostage situation actually a couple of days ago, which ended yesterday, I believe. And this guy was tucked into this like video cafe kind of thing, 24/7 one. And he had a hostage. And basically the modus operandi here is to wear the person out. That was just the way they operate, right? They will wear you out. They give you the food. They'll say, I'll try and help you. And basically they kept negotiations on for 18, 20 hours. And they broke the door in after, they somehow found out that the guy was on the floor resting, right? They would do that. But this was, almost a full day, right? It's a very different sort of mindset here.
So with that mindset, right, would you say that the number one skill that one needs in Japan is, in fact, not being a protector, but being a fixer, being somebody to negotiate, somebody to persuade? Is that the number one skill?
I think as close protection professionals, having the skills to protect your principal, that's given. That's number one. So we need that for sure. But to display it in Japan, you would have to tune it a bit to not stick out, so to speak. There's even a saying here in Japan, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. So you have to people in the industry probably know that, Opus, Entourage has security, but regular folks, we try and blend in as much as possible. And then, of course, fixing skills. That's very important as well. You can't push your way in. A lot of Japanese folks, even the hotels, they don't care who your VIP is, right? I mean, a VIP is a VIP unless it's VIP. But even then, it's very hard for them to provide some of the services expected overseas, where you could tip a guy and say, hey, can you do this for me in Japan? I mean, it's not impossible, but it takes a bit of people skills and a bit of fixing to do as well.
Got it. All right. Well, again, in a short amount of time, I learned a lot. So thank you for that, Kenji.
We're waiting for you. We got to see.
So what's next for you, Kenji? Are you planning more overseas trips, or are you staying local for the Olympics?
I'll be staying local. The vaccine rollout in Japan has been pretty slow. We have 5-6% vaccinated, and it might take us until the end of the year. So I think overseas travel might be tough for most security folks. Obviously with the 2-week quarantine in Japan, a lot of our clients are unable to come down as well, unless they want to do the quarantine. You'd be surprised though. I mean, the trains are still packed. The mask culture has been here since forever, so it's no surprise that the numbers are kind of different in Japan, even though we do have problems here. But yeah, hopefully when the plague gets resolved somehow, we'll see more folks visiting Japan again, and obviously outbound missions as well.
Got it. Wonderful.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll try to hold an event there. It'd be lovely. It's been a fair few years since I was there, so we hope to do it. Well, Kenji Okamoto, thank you for being a great guest on the Circuit Magazine podcast. I know it is going to be a very interesting month with the Olympics, but I hope that we can forge relationships beyond the Olympics as we go forward. From Elijah and myself, thank you very much, Kenji.
Thank you very much, guys.
Kenji.
Have a good one. Take care.
Kenji Okamoto, it was a privilege to speak with him. Obviously, I can't be in Japan for the Olympic Games, but I got a flavor of what it might be like. I think that's the exciting part. I want to be there. I want to see it, but who's saying you're not going to go on a detail yourself? Because a lot of people are making last-minute decisions, and your principal could suddenly get you to go to Japan. What did you take away from today's session, John?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's funny you should say that, because I was just sitting here thinking, hey, I'm not going to Japan this year, and I'm quite relieved actually. But then I thought to myself, well, who's to say I'm not? Who knows what's going to happen, right? And that is the nature of this industry, and that's what we love about it, isn't it? But it's definitely useful to have good contacts and good information from people like Kenji on the ground. And what I take away is that there's going to be some big challenges there, but they're not necessarily going to be in the usual areas that we would anticipate for executive protection. But really, I think that really rings true to the role of a modern protector. And that is somebody who has a far greater skill set than just protection, but obviously understands the importance of protection as their core skill. And it's really, it's about this level of facilitation. There's more high net worths in the world than ever before, and that's great for us in our industry. That provides a lot of work. However, that also means that we're scrutinized a lot more. The expectations are higher, and you have to be able to deliver. So it's not just about relying on those core skills anymore.
You're right. It's the whole tool set. And as we said with our interview with Monica last week, the right tool for the job. And you'd be surprised at what tool sets are necessary. An extra language I mean, imagine if Japanese was your extra language. Suddenly, yes, absolutely, this will be valuable. But I think facilitation as a skill set, you know what? Maybe we have to do an entire session on that. That sounds like a skill set we need to focus on for the protector of tomorrow.
Yeah, well, you know, the protection team now is much more a la carte. I think having a core team, you know, for familiarity, loyalty, and so on is always going to be a necessity. But the ability to be able to add to the team, as you put it, the tools that you require for any particular job, and to be able to add that on as and when you need is a real plus. And in the connected world we live in, there's no reason why we can't do that anymore.
I love it. And talking about Japan, one thing I didn't even mention to our host, I have rudimentary Japanese, right? I went to a wedding in Japan. Suddenly, guess who got wheeled out every time there was some big question or conflict? Yes, me. And just some rudimentary Japanese, it made all the difference. Yes, I was not working, but I did solve a few issues over wedding etiquette, or I don't know, something to do with the food. Just that little glimmer, and suddenly you're wheeled out, and it is a useful tool. But talking about tools and learning and development, you know, we've got a lot of interesting articles coming up in the forthcoming magazine, but we've also got Elijah's course in July. What else do you think people should sort of look out for these coming months? Because considering we're entering the summer period now.
Well, yeah, that's right. This is the busy time of the year. Okay, so we've just got the magazine out. We've had some good events, and now we've got a little bit of a lull as the summer season kicks in. And I think everyone's going to appreciate that, because, you know, we're all focused on our clients at the moment. It's all about them. It's all about the principal. It's a fast moving time of the year. So yeah, let's see what's on the horizon.
Looking forward to it, absolutely. And yeah, keep those comments coming on the Protector app and the BBA Connect app. Please keep asking those questions. We are here to help. Really enjoying that community feel. So from John and myself, thank you very much to Kenji Okamoto for being such a great guest today. And we're very much looking forward to another fantastic edition of the Circuit Magazine podcast.
You have been listening to the Circuit Magazine podcast. Be sure to subscribe and be sure to not miss an episode.